Hi, I'm Mary B. Safrit, and welcome to the Unsuitable podcast. Today I have my friend Pablo Marino on the show. He is a freelance photographer. You can follow him on Instagram at Pablo Saw These. That's one word, and the spelling for that will be in the show notes, just in case you can't understand my diction. He is a server at a celebrity chef's restaurant in the very trendy Soho neighborhood of New York. He's also in school right now studying business. I'm really excited for y'all to hear from him, so here we go. Hi, Pablo. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Mary, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I'm very glad that you had the night off, so also thank you to your managers for giving you a great schedule.
Thank you to my managers for letting me have a job and for letting me have this night off.
Yes, we're very grateful to the managers of the restaurant where I used to work and Pablo still works.
And we won't name.
And we will not name the restaurant or the managers because that's its own thing.
Also, a quick shout out to Chad. Chad, hello.
Yes, Chad, the sound editor for the show, also used to work at said restaurant. That's how we all met. So yes, shout out to Chad. Hey, Chad. And thank you for making us sound amazing when we actually sound kind of derpy. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. Pablo, you sound great.
Oh, no. Once I put on the headphones, definitely derp.
Well, speaking of derpy, would you tell me about a time that you felt unsuitable?
Yes. So, again, I remember when you asked me this question, and it was the first image that popped into my head was actually a photograph of me in an art opening in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in 2009, I believe. I forget how old I was. And in this photograph, you see this tall, lanky, awkward me looking back surprisingly that at the camera. I didn't know I was getting my picture taken, but so from that photo, you can pretty much tell how that night went. The backstory of that was I was visiting family, and my cousin, who was a art director for this school/art gallery, was having an opening for one of her students, and she invited me to come along. And this trip to Argentina was, the first big trip I had by myself. So it was really cool to get out and do things solo, and experiencing new things. And she said, "Hey, if you're free this night, you should come by. It's cool, young people, there'll be drinks. Awesome, come by." It's like, yeah, okay, I can do that. And I went. First time taking the metro anywhere in any country. First time, a lot of firsts. That trip was really, really fun. So I get to this art gallery. I meet my cousin, and I think for the first 10 to 15 minutes, it was really cool. I was like, oh wow, this is really interesting. Here I am, no parents. This is a really cool event. And then she disappeared because she was the art director, so she had to mingle with everyone there. And then I was left alone. And at that time, I guess I wasn't very social. So all I could do was just pace around looking at the art. And it was a small show, so there wasn't a lot of art to look at. There was wine. Many art shows have, sometimes they have drinks. And at that time, I didn't drink wine, but I needed to have something in my hand.
Right.
So I had this horrible, disgusting red wine, which is probably good, but
yeah, at the time.
So just walking around and sipping this horrible wine, and then I speak Spanish, but not as fluent to the point that I'm confident to engage with other people.
Right.
There's plenty of people there,
right.
And just felt out of place. Kept pacing around, and being that she was a big part of this event, she had to stay till the end.
Yeah.
And she wanted to hang out. She was like, okay, we'll do the event and then we'll go get some food. This event was like 2 hours and a half of me just pacing, and sometimes she'd come over and ask me how I liked it and introduce me to someone, and in the trying to bring someone over, start the conversation, and then she would slowly back out so that I could have a conversation.
Right.
But no, that wouldn't happen. My Spanish wouldn't carry me through funny jokes.
Right. Or like nuanced commentary about art.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would just be like, I live in Florida, and how do you know the artist? And then they just like slowly be like, let me, I got a thing over here, and they're like, oh yeah, no, please go, and then they go, and so yeah, that was I felt super out of place, and again, in this moment of being in Argentina by myself and being open, this was a huge letdown. It's like, is this what it's like? It's like to be on your own?
Yeah. Just flailing in really uncertain social situations.
Yeah. So luckily, that ended. And we got food. We went and got food and talked about how awkward it was, actually. 'Cause she asked me, did you have fun?
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, it was nice, but I can't really recall anything else than, the 3 paintings I would specifically stand in front. Like I really knew what I was thinking about it, for 2 hours.
Right.
But.
And this was, it's not like you had probably a smartphone you could escape to.
Oh, no.
To be like, I just.
Yeah, no.
Make you look busy and important.
No,
you were just there in it.
Yeah, and that's why I like the picture, because the picture, it's like someone called me and I didn't turn my body completely. I just turned my head, and they took the picture, and that face of like, what am I doing here, was pretty much that whole night.
Yeah. Well, was that so you were born in Argentina? Was that your first time back in Argentina?
Oh yeah, I was born.
Since you moved?
No, I was born in Argentina and left fairly young, but that was the 3rd time.
Oh, okay.
So the first 2 times were with family, and it wasn't till later on that we were able to go all together as a family because of financial struggles.
Right.
The whole immigrant story, leaving my parents taking us out of the country really young, and then starting to build a future for us, a future for them. So going back was not a plan.
Okay. Yeah. Could you walk us through how that went for you? Your dad was a pastor in Argentina, and then once y'all immigrated to Florida as well. And can you just kind of talk us through how that was for you?
Yeah, so my dad had a church in Buenos Aires that he built with his hands. It was brick by brick. I remember, and it's funny. Okay, so when someone says, I remember when I was a kid, and then we always wonder how young were we that this is a valid memory. But for me, it was, what I find interesting is that since I left when I was 5, that's a huge change. So you kind of do remember something completely different. So I feel like I do have memories of being 3, 2. So I do have memories of carrying shovels around and playing with wheelbarrows, trying to get this church built. So we built that church. We stayed there for I think 2 years, and then it was an interesting move. My father did a lot of trips. He wanted to set up a home base before we all went. So when he was this was between mid 91 to early 92 is when he was fixing everything.
For y'all to go to the States, come to the States.
Yeah. So when he finally got everything together, he was attending a church in Miami Beach. I can't remember the name of it at the time. I think it was a Lutheran church. Mm-hmm. And everything lined up. He got an apartment, and the church provided everything. Like they provided furniture and clothes, everything. And then that's when my dad pulled the trigger and let's get everyone to Miami. So we moved in mid 92 to Miami. Again, this church that I don't know if he was a deacon or co-pastor, but I remember the church being a big part of my beginnings in this country because it's how we got along. Integration and we did school, but it was Sunday school first. So meeting other Hispanics and Americans. And then my dad. My dad's always been in the church. He did seminary here in the States, actually. And I think from early churches to later on, he always had a big role in the church.
What was that experience like for you growing up with a pastor for a dad?
Being somewhat behind the scenes, like knowing what's going on, but again, not really the focus. I think everyone or every preacher's kid knows that you're under a spotlight. And I didn't see that until when we decided to start our own church, where there was this group in a neighboring town that was gathering. I think it was close to 10, 15 people that, would do Bible study together, and they just needed leadership. And someone else from this church that we were attending had tried to start it, to get it going, but felt like there was a lack of commitment from the group, so they, bailed out. And then they reached out to my dad, and my dad's a go-getter, so he's like, yeah, let's do it. It was like an hour drive from where we lived. So we would do this early Sunday service with this small group at someone's house. And then, the late Sunday at our regular church.
Okay.
So it was interesting around this time because it started becoming, church was everything. There was regular church, there was this new church, there was Wednesday night service, there was youth service. So there was a lot. There was a lot of church. And then on top of that, what I'm very grateful for as far as moral fiber is my parents would get us together at the house, and we would go over, I forget the name of this book, but it was this Christian book that would have stories and I guess parables. And there was always this one game which was like, what would you do if you were, and then it'd give you the situation. And then we would answer, and through the teachings of, I guess, of the Bible, we would learn right from wrong. I think it was less teachings of the Bible. It was a good mix of Bible and just reality, right? Because I always felt like when you're too, strict, too, this is what the Bible says, you know, as a younger person, it's less interesting, or it's, when you're just talked to about something, or talked to about something, with the assistance of, stuff from the Bible, then it makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because, growing up, I was always Christian and I guess religious, but, you're a kid. So how serious can you be about things until someone puts it in, like they're talking to you, they're not telling you do what the Bible says, rather do what you think is right. And through being in the church and going over these things, you'd find a middle point. And I felt like these teachings and these times that we had together of coming up with real life situations, really sculpted who I am and how I see what's fair, and I guess how to act, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps when it's contextualized, right? Like, okay, this is what the Bible says, but what about when I'm living my everyday life, which seems, when you're, even for me now, to be honest, but especially when you're growing up, it can be really difficult to connect this like book about life in like ancient Israel to what's happening to you, in your modern everyday life. Do you feel like your church experience was very, I don't know, you sounded like you were pretty engaged during that time. But I know that we've talked about this before. You kind of started to fade out as you got older.
Yeah, it was interesting to move from going to church and taking part of church to being church. Once my dad took over as pastor of this group, we started taking roles. I don't want administrative roles, so it's my dad, my mom, and their 4 children, and we all had something to do in the church. It stopped being we're going to church, sing the songs, listen to the sermon. I had various roles, a couple of ones that were actually counterproductive to going to church because, so to put it in perspective here, so I would I'd be the sound guy. For a while, the church that we had was renting a church space from an American Lutheran congregation, and so they do their service fairly early, and there'd be an hour, and then we'd get there. And this was it was a beautiful church. It's huge. It had the stage. It had on the top side there was the knobs and everything for the sound. So I took on that role, and it was fun. I would say I was engaged in church, but it was so the extent of my duties were put in the CDs for the songs, make sure it doesn't go to the next track, make sure the volumes are right, make sure that there's because there wasn't a live band. It was just like 2 people that sang really well on the stage, and then me with the knobs, and then
DJ Pablo.
Yeah. I would say DJ sleeps a lot, because what I would do is I would set everything. It's all automated.
Yeah.
So I would just have everything set, and then I would lay under my chair and use the legs of the chair as a pillow, and I'd fall asleep. So when the last song, so in this particular church, it would be, everyone gets in, hello, they do the music, and then a quick Q&A, how is everyone doing? Who should we pray for? And then the sermon. So around the Q&A is when I decided to take a nap. And I wouldn't time it. I think I'd just fall asleep and hope I got up, because right after the sermon, there's the call to the front.
Right.
And then I had to play the one CD with the really mellow music, with little chimes. So I had to time my naps between the Q&A and the calling people up, which is horrible. It's why go to church to sleep? I know. It's but this was still it was interesting, because I was still young, and I was being forced to go to church. I want to say I was forced going to church, but was I a believer? Yes, I believed in God. Did I have an idea on how to walk the earth as a son of God? Yeah, I had do good. And, but, so what I'm saying is, church at that age didn't exist for me. This was being part of the organization, was complete detachment.
Yeah.
I'm sleeping. It just became something I did on Sundays. And then shortly after, around high school, after high school, I started driving, and it became optional. And then, and I guess that's a key, think about a key point in one's life with the church, that everything that happened before should lead up to your decision. Is this something you want to continue? And unfortunately, it really wasn't for me. I never really had this really close attachment to it. And believe you me, my family is very, I want to say religious, but very deep in their relationships. They're with God. And then very, very open in a way to, I guess, accept my decision to not continue to go. It was interesting, I just to touch back on why I picked sleeping over waking up and getting ready on a Sunday to go to church. I always wondered how the kids that were going to these youth meetings, I always wondered if they were being forced, or I wondered, what is it that attracts them to this? Because I wasn't sure. I guess there has to be a connection between the relationship and the religious, and then your beliefs. And I guess to this day, I still don't really know where there was that disconnection. Maybe my parents should have been more tougher about me staying in the church. But I don't know, many factors come into play when one decides what the church holds for them. And being a pastor's kid was seeing the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Seeing the politics, seeing the nasty stuff,
Yeah.
So it was being part of drama, seeing that your parents are part of drama. Of course, there was so many moments, ups and downs,
Yeah.
when the pastor has to deal with things, or the pastor's wife, the pastor's kids have to be a certain way. And I don't know, it's difficult. I think I saw a lot of, I don't want to say hate, just dislike for people, for what they would do, I guess, to my parents. My parents, as an example, my parents really helped a lot of our churchgoers when it came to helping them get their paperwork to become illegal in this country.
To become legal.
To become legal.
Yes.
A lot of illegal immigrants would. It was most of the church was illegal immigrants, and they would get help from my dad, because my dad, he did all the legal stuff back in the early 90s, citizenship, all that.
Right.
So he had an idea of what he was doing, and every time these people would ask my father, he would try to help them, and he did. He helped many people get their papers and get everything in order. But a lot of them would go through that process, and then they just leave. Like once everything is...
Once there was no benefit for them or whatever.
Yeah. And I guess the negatives in that was that there was a lot of promises. A lot of promises were made to my father, and then not really kept. There was disputes between certain parts of the organization. As we became bigger, we did away with the CDs, and we started having live bands. And in a church structure, the pastor is a big head, and so is the director of music. And then once we had the ability to have this director of music who did all the music and sometimes would co-pastor, that almost became, I don't want to say a power struggle, but there was inner turmoil about the direction of the church.
Yeah. Some politicization, if that's a word. Politicism? Politics.
Yeah.
Let's just say politics. I do words for a living.
So no, yeah, there was a lot of that, and that's what I saw. So when it came time to decide, do I want to go to church today? And I was given the option. I very timidly, like a dog who's given a treat, but who they put a treat in front of them and they say you can have it, but you're not sure. The dog's not sure.
Is this a trick?
Yeah, because So for me, it was not to say that, you know what? Yeah, at the time, not going to church was a treat because it was.
It was like your whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was more a freedom. Okay, now you have the freedom to choose, and I think that's a big part in the development of someone, of one's ideas of their place in the church or in religion or in their belief. I do appreciate that there was an option. So I sustained. I didn't go, and then it would be, I didn't go this Sunday, but I'd go to the next one. Then I'd skip that one, and then I wouldn't be going. I think of everything else to do on a Sunday. Sundays became Sundays, And again, I think that's also another thing. Like all your life, Sunday is church.
Right.
And then someone opens the door to your Sunday and there's nothing.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, let me do it.
Right.
Yeah, and I took it.
Because you were also working a lot at the time, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I was working, I think, full time. It's a small job. I don't remember where I was, but that again, another one. You want your weekends. You work and you want your weekends off. And at this point, when I was able to not go to church, I didn't really have any responsibilities. So yeah, it was. I was ready. I was ready to not go anymore. And then there was the responsibilities of, being the music guy or sometimes helping with the kids.
Right.
Or, Sunday school. It was a small little organization we had. And everything was led by the Marino family. It was us. We did everything. But once... we started to, I think I passed the baton, actually. You know what? I think I passed the baton to my younger brother. So he was doing all that stuff. And then he was still forced, again, because I think the age difference is, I think it's 4 years.
Okay.
So he had to go.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, thinking about it, I had all this put on a plate to, like, stay or go. And I left. And I think that was it. I think after that time of continuously being involved in the church, I'm saying not going to church, I mean being involved in the church,
Right.
was over. And I wasn't looking back.
Yeah.
I still lived with my parents at the time, and there was no bad blood. And it was still a, Christian household.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing all that. I just have 2 more quick things for you. So when is the last time you went to church?
So the last time I went to church, I'd say a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. I was going through some stuff, and I was really, really, really sad. And I think I had a day off, and I was just not feeling very happy. As I could go as far as saying loved. I wasn't feeling loved, and this was a Sunday, and I needed to go to church. It was just in my gut that I needed to go to church, and not just go to church like I want to go to church and sing, or I want to go to church and listen to the sermon or have someone pray for me. It was I want to go to church and feel loved, because just the memory of being in church is just love, and despite everything that past experiences, being a pastor's kid and seeing everything, but it's just loved by the congregation. I knew that if I went to a church, they'd be doing their things, but I would feel accepted and not alone. And that someone would give me a hug. And I had it played in my mind, someone's going to give me a hug, and I'm going to break down and cry, and then I'm going to feel great. And I went to this church by me, and then there was like the hours. So I was like, oh, they're about to start. And I went to the door, and it was locked. It was locked. I couldn't get into the church.
It was locked?
Yeah, it was Sunday prime church hours. It was locked.
And it said that they were having a service?
Yeah. They maybe they went on a field trip or something. I don't know. But yeah. So I
Wait,
didn't
so
go.
you didn't actually go?
No,
Oh,
I didn't go.
that took a really unexpected turn.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I did get a hug because when I was walking away from the church, there was this group of Jehovah's Witnesses
Okay.
that were selling their books. You know how they set
Yeah.
up. And I was walking, and they saw me like trying to get in and they yell at me from across the street, and they're like, "Hey, come here, come here." So I go over, and they're like, "Hey, no, I don't think they're open today." And I was like, "What? It's Sunday." and then they're like, "Is everything okay?" So we saw you walk by, and you look distraught. And it's like, no, I just wanted to go to church. And they, try to evangelize me. And started asking. It's like, grew up in the church, so they gave me some scriptures.
Yeah.
And the lady gives me a hug. Say, well, I hope everything turns out for the better. And then I went on my way. So I got a hug. It felt nice.
That's great.
Jehovah's Witness.
That's a great story.
Yeah, that was nice.
Could you tell me one thing that's hard right now and one thing that's great?
Not be corny or to jump on someone else's answer.
Okay.
One thing that's hard right now, life. One thing that's great, life. Because life, man, Jesus. But also, I woke up today, and I was able to wake up, and I had plans to come and do this, and I'm doing this, and you're you, and all of it. It's great.
Yeah.
But then it brings you down, but then it brings you up. It's again on the cornier side. It's an interesting ride. But no buts. No buts. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Leave it at that. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Pablo, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story.
Thank you, Marino.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, there we go. Thanks to Pablo again for being on the show. Huge shout out and thank you to Chad Rawlinson for sound editing and theme music. And thanks to you for listening. If you like the show, head over to Apple Podcasts and take a minute to rate and review. And as always, if you're interested in being interviewed, or if you know someone who definitely should be on the show, head over to my website, marybsafrit.com, and click on the Contact Me page. That's all for now. Catch you next time.